Hello everyone. I'd like to wish you all a very happy new year. Sat Sri Akal, Namaste, Adab. On behalf of the Tribune and on my own behalf, I'd like to wish you a year full of peace, joy, fulfillment. And I do hope that you will continue to read the Tribune, a newspaper that you have been reading for so many years. Now we are in a revamped avatar online. We have a new website, tribuneindia.com. We have a new YouTube channel. And these shows that we bring to you from the Tribune stable, including this show of mine, The Great Game. I'm Jyoti Malhotra, and I do hope that you will continue to subscribe to us and tell us what you think of our work. It's only because of your encouragement and support that we are here. So in this brand new year, we do hope that you will continue to engage with us, with each of our shows, and with our new website as well as with the newspaper. Now, in this edition of The Great Game, which is, as some of you may know, the name of my column in the Tribune newspaper, it comes out every Saturday morning. And this is also the name of this video column, which I hope you will watch and comment upon. In this edition, this week, I talk about two museums that I have visited in Chandigarh. Now, some of you may ask, why am I calling a column which I devote to two museums, one of which is the Chandigarh Art Museum, which is in Sector 10, and another one, which is the Fine Arts Museum in the Punjab University. Why am I calling this column The Great Game? Now, the reason for that, and actually some of you readers have written in to ask me this. Arun Nehru, for example, he has sent me a message saying that some of the high policy or some of the foreign policy that India sort of embarks upon, or its relationships with some of the big powers in the world, and perhaps even the politics between, say, the BJP, the Akali Dal, the Aam Aadmi Party, and of course the Congress Party. Now, some of that could qualify as material, as fodder for a column called The Great Game. So what is it about culture? Why is it that I have included an exploration of two museums in Chandigarh, and why have I called it The Great Game? Now, the answer to that is a little complicated, so I hope you will hear me out, dear viewer. The first is that I think politics, culture, whether it's art or music, is about us as human beings. And everything that we do is both politics and culture. And by that I mean the food that you eat. Do you eat sarson ka saag? Do you eat idli, sambar? Do you eat, across the country we have such a diversity of food. Some people are vegetarian, some people are non-vegetarian. In the Northeast, there's a lot of consumption of beef, which a lot of people across the rest of the country don't eat. Large numbers of vegetarians in our country. And the reason I'm talking about food is, which is the point that I'm trying to make, is that the food that we eat, the newspaper that we read, the Tribune hopefully, the movies that we watch, the museums that we go to or don't go to, all this is about politics and it's about culture, because that's what it is about us as people. In this column, The Great Game, in which has come out in the Tribune newspaper, which I hope you will read, I write about the two museums that I just mentioned. And dear viewer, it was quite a disappointment when I went to these museums. I went to both of them over the last few weeks. To the Fine Arts Museum at the Punjab University, it was a dull, rainy day, or not so dull, but a grey, rainy day, an absolutely spectacularly grey day, and I love the color grey. But when I went inside the museum, it was such a huge disappointment actually verging on deep sadness. The tragedy that unfolded in front of me as I walked from gallery to gallery at the Fine Arts Museum, and just what a spectacular collection it has, curated by none other than B.N. Goswami, an internationally renowned art historian who died just over a year ago. Chandigarh was proud to call Mr. Goswami its first son, one of its beloved citizens. Mr. Goswami curated the collection, more than 1,200 artworks, and what a collection it is. You have J. Swaminathan, A. Ramachandran, Bhupen Kakkad, the greats of India, the contemporary masters of India, all hanging at the Fine Arts Museum. And what a way to spend a morning there. I spent a couple of hours. Now, where does the tragedy come from, and where does this deep sadness that I experienced come from? Because if you go there, dear viewer, what you will see is that these remarkable artworks are hanging. They're plastered or pasted on a piece of cardboard and hanging by a simple twine on the walls of that art gallery. It's been painted recently, so you can see that it's sort of slapdash. The paint is slapdash. Of course, there was absolutely nobody in that art gallery that morning except me. When I was leaving, 2 students from the Punjab University were coming in. When I asked the lady at the reception, she was not a guide. I asked her what she did, and she said she just helped out at the reception. She was toasting her hands over a heater at the reception. She was kind enough. And I asked her, I said, how many people come to this art gallery? And she said, bahut sare log aate hain. I said, how many? And she said, well, 10 to 12 people. Now imagine that. An art gallery, a museum which has such a fine collection of India's masters. And look at it, just hanging over there, a complete wastage. So you wonder, what is it about Chandigarh that lends itself to this kind of indifference? My next stop, now I won't say next stop because the visit to these 2 museums happened across a few weeks. I went to the Chandigarh Museum, which is in Sector 10, Chandigarh's most famous museum, which is like a must-see, a must-watch or a must-stop for any visitor to this lovely city. A city that all of you know as City Beautiful. You call it the City Beautiful because it is such a gorgeously planned city. Planned by none other, of course, than the Swiss-French architect Le Corbusier. Now, we all know how Corbusier came to Chandigarh, the Nehru connection, and how his first cousin and fellow architect, Jeanneret, also was very much part of the building and designing of Chandigarh. The Fine Arts Museum, let me add, the one in the Punjab University in which all these gorgeous masters are hanging, was designed. The building was designed by Jeanneret. The collections, like I said, was curated by Mr. B.N. Goswami. Now let's fast forward to the Chandigarh Museum in Sector 10, which is also a building designed by Corbusier. Now some of it is this very sort of modernist spirit. You know, maybe Indians or Chandigarhwalas or Punjabis or people across the country may not respond to this spirit of modernism, a really interesting phase in the building, not just of the city, but in the building of a new India in the wake of the trauma of the horrors of partition. So let me give you an example of this trauma of partition. So you walk inside this museum, the Chandigarh Art Museum, which has been designed by Corbusier, and it's quite a marvel, dear viewer. So you have this large door through which you enter, and I think that's one of the highlights of the Corbu design, which is that the door, a thick, teak door, which is the hinge is on the top and on the bottom. So it's not like a regular door where the hinge is on one side, but it's a top-bottom hinge, so it swivels on its own axis. So anyway, you push open this enormous teak door and you go inside, and that's again when the tragedy starts. The ticket is very, very cheap, very inexpensive, only 20 rupees. You ask for a brochure. There aren't any. The guy at the counter said to me that they're finished. The ones in French are still available. And I asked why French. And he said, well, there's lots of French people who come. And then I thought to myself, it's perhaps because Corbusier himself was Swiss French. So when, people from that country come, or those countries come to Chandigarh, maybe that's the language that they understand. Anyway, so you walk up the ramp. It's not a very big museum. It's a smallish museum. And on the right-hand side is this large artwork. It's a rope. It's a work made out of rope by an artist called Mrinal Mukherjee, which is, again, very unfortunately frayed at the bottom. So I asked my guide, I said, what happened here? And she said, well, it's been hanging here for a while. It's been damaged. She didn't tell me why it was damaged. So you walk up the museum and you then come face to face with these gorgeous sculptures, these bronze sculptures from Nepal and from other parts of the country. You go, a few steps forward and there are these Sanghol excavations. And dear viewer, Sanghol site, which is not far from Chandigarh, 40 or 50 kilometers, very much part of the Indus Valley civilization, so more than a couple of thousand years old. You take a right from the Sanghol room and you come across the Gandhara sculptures. Now, when I refer to the trauma of partition, this is an example of that trauma. So what happened was in 1947, when India was being divided into India and Pakistan, Indians who were coming from Pakistan to India, or the new country that was being created. So when the country was being divided into India and Pakistan, and those who were coming from this new country that was being created to India said that they also wanted to divide the art treasures. Now, the Gandhara sculptures are this incredible collection of sculpture from Takshila, from those parts of northern Pakistan, which is where the Kushan dynasty, again, in the early parts of the 1st century AD or 2nd century AD. So the influence of Buddhism, and as Buddhism spreads from what is today Bihar, it is several streams of the spread of Buddhism, one which is across the North India. The other one was from the sea and it goes to what is now China and Japan. We won't talk about that in this video. But this spread of Buddhism across northern India, and then it finds its way across the Pamir, North Central Asia, and the expanding influence of Buddhism across these parts. Anyway, to come back to my story, from Takshila, these Gandhara art or sculptures, these artworks, were brought to the Lahore Museum. So in 1947, people said, we must divide up our treasures as well, which is what they did. So 60% was kept back by the Lahore Museum, and some of you who have had the incredible opportunity to see some of that work, and I have had many years ago when things were much better between India and Pakistan. So 40% was brought to India. And then when the new city was being built and the Chandigarh Museum was being built, this 40% of that inheritance is displayed at the Gandhara, in the Gandhara gallery. So you go forward deep into the gallery, take a right, and then you have the rooms of the Pahari paintings, works by Nain Sukh, Manaku. And we know, dear viewer, all you have to do is to Google the name M.S. Randhawa. Again, he was Chandigarh's beloved first citizen. He was so much. He was an agriculturist. He was a great bureaucrat. He was, of course, a lover of the arts. And what he did is that he scoured the valleys and the hills of Himachal Pradesh, of undivided Punjab, shall we say. And he got from these little kingdoms, or then kingdoms, Guler, Kangra, Basoli, works of art, miniature paintings from them, brought them to the Chandigarh Museum. And that's how we have this incredible collection, again, curated by none other than the incredible B.N. Goswami, who gave to us an understanding of our own heritage, an understanding of what it means to be Indian. And that's why, dear viewer, I call this the great game. What does it mean to be Indian? What does it mean to live in Chandigarh, to have these museums at your doorstep and to not go there, to not visit there, to be completely indifferent to your own heritage? What does that mean to us? Are we just products of what we eat and what we do at our place of work? Don't we have the responsibility, or not just doesn't our heart fill with joy when we watch these incredible specimens of high art and high culture. People who were Indian a couple of thousand years ago, that connection with what we have today and what was back then 2,000 years ago, 1,500, a couple of hundred years ago. These are people who, this is a demonstration of their excellence, the pinnacle of excellence that they achieved, now demonstrated in miniature paintings, in the Gandhara sculptures, in the Sanghol excavations at the Chandigarh Museum, and the contemporary masters in the Fine Arts Museum at the Punjab University. And my last comment is the following, which is, so forget about all the museums. Don't go there. I know that some of you may not be interested in, dead things. So go to the Capitol complex, again in the heart of the city. The open hand, you know that the open hand is a symbol of the city of Chandigarh. There is the open hand at one end. On the one hand, you have the High Court complex, and across that plaza, the expanse, is the Haryana and Punjab legislative assemblies. But guess what, dear viewer? You need permission to go there. Somebody even told me that you need to register to go there as part of a tour, for example. If you're not a lawyer, you can't go to the High Court, or unless you're a petitioner in some way. Again, if you're not a member of the legislative assemblies, then you cannot visit there again, unless you're registered as a visitor on a tour. But what is the problem? Why is it that you cannot go and wander around that complex? Why is it that it's not full of people, walking in a sunny Sunday morning or a Saturday morning in these gorgeous winter mornings of Chandigarh? Why is it that this expanse is not full of people? And then what I did was that I went to the Elante Mall, and guess what? Of course, it was full of people. So why is the Elante Mall full of people, and why is the Capitol complex, which is so historical and so redolent of the building of this great city, why is that empty of people? And that's the question I want to ask in the great game. What is it about Chandigarh that keeps the people out? Is it in the name of high security? Why do you need permission to go and watch the open hand turn on itself, on its axis, in the direction of the wind? Why is it that I cannot watch this magnificent piece of sculpture? Is it because I need permission? Who is the one who's going to give me permission? People have said to me that when they were young, that they were able to roam around these spaces. Why is it that we are not able to do that today? So, dear viewer, in this video, The Great Game, I do ask all these questions. As a recent member of your beloved city, now at the Tribune, I'm very much part of this, of this ambience, of this spirit, of this exploration of this great city of yours. I do hope that you will respond and ask these questions, comment on the video, and let's hope that we are able to eliminate the indifference that we have, not just in ourselves, but in our governments. Let's throw open the spaces to the people. Let's all celebrate together in this new year and for the rest of the year. Thank you so much for watching. This is Jyoti Malhotra from the Tribune. And don't forget, do follow us across our social media and subscribe to the Tribune.